Live from the SABC's Auckland Park headquarters, welcome to this Thursday edition of the Watchdog. My name is Vuyo Mvoko, and here's what we have in store for you this evening.
There's no doubt that the wage dispute became a huge problem in relation to availability of staff, damage to plant, sabotage, intimidation of staff.
The Public Enterprises Minister sticks to his guns, blames the workers' industrial action and inexperience within Eskom for its latest woes. We'll tell you what he just said and bring you reaction from the unions. Public Protector Koleka Galeka lays down the law in what definitely won't go down well with her suspended boss. We look at the decisions she announced a few hours ago and the implications they will have going forward for both Busisiwe Mkhwebane and the Office of the Public Protector. And in our big interview of the day, we speak to author and activist Songezo Zibi. A few days ago, the former newspaper editor addressed an assembly of civil society organizations and struggle veterans as they gathered in search of lasting solutions to the country's political and economic crisis. That's what's coming up in tonight's episode of The Watchdog, which starts now. Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan is sticking to his guns. The recent industrial action by the NUM and NUMSA is to blame for the worsened crisis at Eskom, which saw the country entering stage 6 load shedding. Inexperience is also to blame, Gordhan says. He was addressing a Wits University School of Governance seminar about an hour ago. Take a listen to what he said.
We don't have enough experienced people within Eskom, so some of the old timers are being rallied so that they can mentor some of the new managers and operatives that we actually have. And in terms of the more recent issues over the last 10 days or so, there's no doubt that the wage dispute became a huge problem in relation to availability of staff, damage to plant, sabotage, intimidation of staff, and people who were key to the operations of power stations as well. So the board, the management, and government as a whole across all of our departments is looking at all of these issues very intensely for some time now. And as I said, solutions are being formulated to ensure that there's more megawatts available within our system, that we eventually get rid of load shedding completely, that for a while we might have load shedding at a lower level, as Eskom itself has actually announced. But there's more clarity now, I think, about how we will actually find the solutions to some of the problems that we actually have.
On the line, we have Phakamile Hlubi, Trade Union NUMSA's national spokesperson, as well as Helgard Cronje, who is Trade Union Solidarity's Deputy General Secretary. Good evening to both of you, and thank you so much for your time. I'm going to start with you, Phakamile. What a pity you are in the dark. You've just been load shed. Just your thoughts on what he said there about how we got to stage 6.
Good evening, and good evening to your viewers. Apologies that I can't be online. Unfortunately, I am in the dark, as is most of South Africa. And I think that is actually the crux of the matter here, Vuyo, is that from the time that these protests broke out at Eskom power stations, the minister has taken an approach where he has deliberately presented workers as if somehow they are to blame. He has demonized them deliberately in the eyes of the public and completely exonerated himself and government for the responsibility and for the mess that they created. So much of where we are today is because of poor decision making, poor leadership at the highest levels, and now they want to blame workers once again. I think, first of all, on the issue of load shedding, we have had persistent load shedding since, for many years, but certainly it worsened under this leadership, under Andre de Ruyter. CSIR even reported that we've had the worst case of load shedding in history. And the minister blamed workers, accused them of sabotaging the economy, which we think is quite outrageous. But that accusation has never been laid at the doorstep of Andre de Ruyter and those highly paid executives who are failing to do what they need to do in order to keep the lights on. Secondly, we know, based on what we've been told by members, that they've started shutting down units at certain power stations. We've lost almost 2,000 megawatts due to closures of certain units at certain power stations. These are decisions that were taken at the highest level, where government decided to close power stations in order to make way for IPPs, but didn't bother to make a plan to ensure that we have sufficient base load to kick in. And the problem with IPPs is that it's intermittent energy. It's not the kind of energy that you can use to power industry. But unfortunately, no one is listening to the unions who've been saying this consistently. There is this very strong push towards this form of renewable energy, which is extremely costly, but which right now is failing to assist us in our energy needs. Mm-hmm. And part of the reason why there's no political will to tackle this is because the politicians themselves are benefiting through these contracts that are being rolled out. Politicians in the ANC and their family members are benefiting. So all of this is being used to justify the privatization of energy supply in this country, because there are politicians and their family members who are connected to the governing ANC who stand to benefit through these contracts.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, it's completely disingenuous for the minister to then turn around and blame workers. Again, on the one hand, he says workers lack the skill, but on the other hand, he blames the very same workers for stage 6 load shedding. It can't be both. You can't say they lack the skill, but at the same time, you need them to keep the lights on.
Okay.
You must decide.
Helgard, what your thoughts on what the minister had to say?
Look, I mean, the fact of the matter is, we know that Eskom has been in trouble for a while. We have had load shedding prior to the current protest and strike action. So for government to insinuate that the current situations at Eskom is only because of striking workers, I should fully agree with Pakamile. Is a total effort to shift the blame from government. I mean, we've got Minister Gwedi Mantashe also saying that government cannot be blamed for the struggles at Eskom and they cannot take responsibility for that. So it's nothing new. We have a government that lacks the ability to take accountability for their actions or their inactions. So it's a definite problem. I think if you withdraw services from a place of from a workplace like Eskom, it will definitely have an impact. So in stating that protesting workers had an impact on the operations of Eskom is not entirely false, but it should not have the impact on Eskom that it has. And I think to a certain extent the government should carry some of that blame. We sit with state capture as well that hasn't been addressed. We sit with the same indecision regarding the state capture prosecution that we sit with when taking decisions on the energy crisis. So the point of the matter is we sit with a government that lacks the willingness to take decisive decisions and act on those decisions, because we are sitting with an extreme energy crisis. And you sit with DPE that on their Twitter account has the time to say that the media houses should not spread false information. Maybe if they provide information, that then media houses won't speculate. The fact of the matter is nobody knows what government is planning, and I think it's great that Minister Pravin Gordhan at last has something to say about government's plan this evening.
Well, he
It's
says.
unfortunate.
Well, he says they are looking at these issues, and he reckons they now kind of understand the problems better, and I'm summarizing here, and that they are closer to solutions than perhaps has been the case before. Have you seen any evidence, or have your members seen any evidence of that, Helgard?
Look, Boyo, they've been close to solving the energy crisis since 2000, when they started Medupi and Kusile, and look where we're sitting now. So it's not as if the government's track record supports what they are saying. And it's the same thing with our government, they are always dissecting problems and finding solutions. You don't see an action plan and them acting on that action plan and actually executing something, So you always see a master plan and discussions about the master plan and how things should change. And they are always close, but they never actually reach the goal. And I think that's part of the problem.
Pagamile, I mean, I hope we can play this bite where Pravin Gordhan goes back into history, in other words, apportioning part of the blame to that history. And the question I asked myself after hearing that was that, I mean, that history is well known. And I think the problem is, or the question is, what then the government subsequently did with the problems that had been identified that are, in fact, well known.
Well, this is the thing about this government, is that they do a lot of talking, but they don't take a lot of action, except the kind of action that benefits themselves personally. And that's what we're seeing happening at Eskom. I think also one of the things that certainly for me that I thought was something of interest that I think we as a public should engage on also, which is a matter of importance, is the president coming out and confirming what we've always suspected, that Eskom is targeting townships with prolonged power outages through load reduction. And that confirmation for me was quite powerful, because it actually speaks a lot about how far Eskom has come in terms of its role in society. This was a state-owned entity which had a developmental agenda. Its goal was to ensure the electrification of the entire country. Now Eskom is literally targeting black people, black townships, deliberately through load reduction. It's something that's been going on for a very long time. I remember speaking to someone last week complaining about stage 6, and she said, oh no, this for me is better than load reduction, because at least there's a schedule and they're following the schedule. And it just shows you that there's a whole half of South Africa that's lived or has been living under stage 6 for a very, very long time. And this is what Eskom has been reduced to, where it's no longer, its focus is no longer about ensuring the electrification of all. Only those who can afford will be able to access electricity. And we all have to ask ourselves deep questions as a society about, is this really a sustainable model given the kind of unemployment that we have in South Africa? You can't say that bringing in the private sector is good for us. It's not. We've got 46% unemployment. We've got millions of people out of work, and even those who are working are earning very little. How do we expect this economy to grow? How do we expect businesses to grow when electricity is out of reach, not even for ordinary people, even for small and medium-sized businesses?
Okay.
And unfortunately, our government is not talking about solutions in relation to that. We just keep hearing about IPPs, which are only going to benefit a very small minority of this society, without actually dealing with the generalized energy question as a whole, in terms of how we power up this economy and how we're going to build this economy with the challenges that we're facing at the moment.
Okay. In fact, in news just in, Pravin was Pravin Gordhan was heckled and chased out of that hall where he was addressing, or he was speaking earlier, from that speech from which we got that soundbite that we played earlier. There was commotion and he had to leave the room, we are told, but we are trying to get those visuals which will play for our viewers sometime during the course of the show. But let me thank both of you, Pagamile and Helgard, for talking to us this evening. Again, breaking news there. That particular, okay, we can, I'm told, play that video. Let's play it.
You are not going to intimidate us. Don't shout. Don't shout. Don't shout. What are you going to do? What? So what? So what? Yeah. You are a disgrace, unfortunately. We are closing the event. You are not.
To this other story now that also broke a few hours ago. Acting Public Protector Koleka Gcaleka has taken a raft of crucial decisions that definitely won't sit well with her suspended boss, Busisiwe Mkhwebane. Here's Opa Sekhalwe, spokesperson for the Public Protector's Office, speaking to some of those decisions.
The Public Protector South Africa will not fund Advocate Mkhwebane's appeal against the recent decision of the Western Cape High Court, where she sought to obtain an urgent interdict to prevent her suspension, the rescission application pending before the Constitutional Court, Part B of the application in the Western Cape High Court, and the defamation of character lawsuit, which is a private matter against the Democratic Alliance. Second, the Public Protector South Africa will fund Advocate Mkhwebane's challenge of her suspension, her defense during the impeachment proceedings, and the perjury criminal case within the Public Protector South Africa's fiscal governance framework, considering that the PFMA and the Treasury regulations require the Public Protector South Africa Accounting Officer to ensure sufficient funding for any expenditure that the institution is required to cover, and that any estimated legal costs are reasonable and budgeted for.
Joining me now is Thabo Mtsweni, who is the chairman of Democracy in Action, as well as Mpumelelo Zikalala, who is the director at Zikalala Attorneys. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you very much for your time. If I may start with you, Mpumi, just what do you make of those decisions announced this afternoon?
I think the acting public protector is saying, I'm only going to deal with matters that pertain to the office. I'm well aware of what I'm supposed to do in terms of the Constitution, but most importantly, the Public Protectors Act. In this case, I'd highlight Section 2, capital A, subsection 7, and also the whole of Section 3, which basically means that, or states that, you are responsible for the finance of the functioning of this particular office. Hence, we are going to urge or direct that you only deal with it in a manner in which it supports your constitutional mandate. Anything other than that, just know that you're not supposed to do. So I think the acting public protector is saying, I'll only deal with things that has to do with the mandate of this office and nothing else. Any other side battles or personal battles between the suspended public protector and any other individual or litigant will not be funded by public funds.
Thabo, for you, what did you read into everything that was said this afternoon? Please unmute.
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, and good evening to your viewers at home. Yes, it's quite unfortunate that the public protector, well, the deputy public protector is taking the stand that she is currently taking, because you'd remember that everything that happens or that is currently happening with the public protector happens while she is still in office. All the cost and all the cost implication related to any litigation, whether be it with a private political party or be with any other matter. For instance, the current matter in the Western Cape High Court happens while the public protector is still in office. So ordinarily, the public protector wouldn't have incurred any other cost if she was an ordinary human being like me and you, if she was not a public protector of South Africa. So it's quite surprising that the Deputy Public Protector will take that stand because these are just not merely personal costs, but of course related to the job that she does, related to the work that she does, and related to that office as well.
Is considering the fact that the public protector herself has actually been slapped with personal costs before, do you not think, Thabo, that perhaps her deputy is trying to be proactive about those things? In other words, making a distinction between things that she may have been or she may have decided to pursue, but which have little or nothing to do with the actual work of the office. Because if you look at the split, it does look like an attempt is being or has been made to really draw that distinction, especially given past experience.
Well, you'd remember that as an organization in the past, we went and solicited funds from individuals, from members of the society, to fund the very same personal costs that have been levied on the person of the public protector. We did that solely mindful of the fact that all those costs she incurred while she was in the office and she was the public protector. Again, if she was not a public protector, she was an ordinary member of the society like me and you, she was not going to incur any cost to that effect. So that's why we went and made sure that we pay all her personal costs. And that's why at the moment we, again, do not understand the reasoning behind it. Because simply put is that, for instance, the matter of the DA, the DA matter came as soon as the public protector was appointed as a public protector. It means that if she was not appointed as a public protector, she was not going to incur any legal costs in that matter or any other matter for that matter. So as an organization, our point is that the public protector must be respected. The public protector must be allowed to do her job without fear, favor, prejudice, and any personal cost to her or her office means that she will do her job under pressure and she will be prejudiced.
Did you hold the same view, Mpumi, that whatever she pursues while, she's public protector, then the office of the public protector should foot the bill, full stop?
It must come with the proviso of saying that whatever that is being pursued must be in line with the mandate as mandated by the Constitution and also the Public Protectors Act. There may be a fine line between what constitutes that in these particular cases, especially with the excluded cases. However, if we look at it from this particular angle, the acting public protector is saying, from the date in which I've been appointed as an acting public protector, the responsibility and the accountability when it comes to the budget falls on me. So I want to be able to answer as to why did I take that particular decision of funding whatever litigation that is there. And I don't want to find myself in a situation where I'm found wanting or there's no merits or any reasonableness in the decision that I've taken. So the safest option would be to say in this case, let me defend the case in which is mostly linked to the office and the running of the office as it is. All those cases which are more linked to you as on a more or less personal level. But I say this personal level in inverted commas because we can't divorce the fact that she's still the public protector, regardless of whether she's suspended or not. But anything else which does not pertain to the core functioning of this office, we are not going to deal with it, we're not going to entertain it because it deals with the current budget that we have. But another point which is going to back her up, the acting public protector in this case is this one. She's going to say, let's then look at the personal cost orders that have been awarded against you. I don't want to find myself in instances where we need to find or scramble against finding monies in which we are going to be forced to pay if that particular cost order is not paid against you. But also, let's look at it from a litigation point of view of saying, when we are deposing to those particular affidavits, there must be certain of acknowledgement of the personal knowledge of the facts which we are going to state them. In instances where it does not pertain, again, the independent functioning of the public protector's office, it does not concern this particular office, it concerns you as an individual. So let's draw a fine line between the two and say, all those that pertain to the public protector's office, we are going to pay the cost for it and be able to fund the particular litigation. But all those which are more on your personal level, as the active or as the suspended public protector, you must bear the brunt for it in terms of the expenses which may accrue on those litigation processes.
Mm-hmm. You know, Tabo, if I may ask, forgetting for a second who we're dealing with and that history, given the reality of the situation that Kolega Kalega is finding herself in, do we not or should we not accept that at the end of the day, she is the one in charge and responsible now, and so her decisions would then have to be respected, and we should trust take a bona fides?
I don't think so, Vio, because you remember that we are dealing with a very blind area. I think people who made the law, who had crafted our constitution, did not foresee some of these issues that we are currently dealing with. And as such, we have to scramble against what we don't know versus where we want to go. And at this moment is that it will be unfairly to treat the public protector in that sense, because that it means that she must bear cost, and cost that ordinarily she would have not accrued in any matter, because if she was not a public protector, she was not going to have any other matter. So here we are dealing with a third force that is trying to drive a wedge between
before we get there, avoid getting there. Just on what we've just said, given, and I'm saying this again, the various court rulings that have gone against her and where she has even slept with the courts, should we then not accept that there is this reality? And I'm going back again to where you started just now, which is that, you know, the drafters of our constitution did not foresee a lot of the things that we have experienced. So we should then be able to learn from past experience and perhaps rely more on that. Given, again, the fact that, you know, there have been, you know, rulings that went against her. So Kolega Kalega should then be a lot more circumspect.
Not exactly, Vuyo. Again, because the forebearers of our countries and all the people that crafted our constitution did not foresee many of these issues. For instance, as an organization, when we took a stance to say that we are going to pay for all the personal costs involving the public protector, we did that mindful of the fact that the public protector should be allowed space to do her job, and she should be allowed to do her job without fear, favor, or prejudice. And in any instance where we start to levy any cost to her job, or to her, to some of the cases that she's dealing with, and then we are saying that she must do her job under fear, and she must do her job under prejudice circumstances. And in that instances, it will not be fair to either the public protector, Advocate Busum Kubane, or to the deputy public protector at the moment. So as such, as an organization, our stance is that any cost related to the office of the public protector, related to the office of or to the person of Ms. Advocate Busum Kubane, or her deputy for that matter, should be borne by the public protector, because ordinarily they wouldn't have accrued any cost in any job that we'll be doing outside the public protector. So it will be unfair for the public protector or the deputy public protector to incur cost on their personal person in any other event.
We'll see, of course, how this pans out. Thank you, both of you. To both of you gentlemen. Thabo Mtsweni is the chairman of Democracy in Action, and Mpumi Zikalala is a legal expert and director at the law firm. After the break, our big interview of the day. Don't go away. Months ago, he formed the Rivonia Circle, a think tank inspired by the ideals of people like Nelson Mandela, Walter Sisulu, Govan Mbeki, and other struggle veterans of the famous Rivonia trial. Since then, the former newspaper editor has raised his hand as a candidate for a future president, subsequently writing a book containing his manifesto. Last week, he addressed an assembly of civil society organizations and struggle veterans, all of them united in their search for lasting solutions to the country's political and economic crisis. Songa Zazebi, welcome to the Watchdog.
Good evening, Vuyo, and thanks for having me.
Interesting things happening in our country these days.
There's drama every day. I can't keep up.
No one can. Trust me. Let's go back. Let's start with the events of the past week, where you addressed that assembly. So the whole, dozens, literally, of organizations that form part of those conversations. Why did you decide to take part?
Because our country is in trouble. And the circle in the Rivonia Circle is about people getting together to discuss the problems of the country and solutions to those problems. And the Defend Our Democracy Conference was the kind of place where, together with other South Africans, we would have been able to discuss some way forward in terms of how we deal with some of our most intractable problems, like corruption, the crisis of governance in South Africa, threats to democracy. And so it was a very important gathering to take part in. And it was very well put together by the organizing committee. It gave everybody a voice.
But what distinguished it from everything else that we have seen, both after, deciding on the, to do what you have done from, forming the Rivonia Circle to then raising your hand, going all the way back to your days, as an editor and before then. What distinguished this particular gathering from everything else that you've witnessed? Yeah.
Over the last, I would say 10 to 12 years, we have seen a proliferation of many organizations in response to what has been happening in the country. Typically, those organizations are concerned with a particular issue or a set of narrow issues that they're going to advocate for or against, and so on. You've got Corruption Watch, sometimes you've got Right to Know, etc., etc.
You've got
Nhlanhla Lux and his thing, right? So you've had a conglomeration of single issues. But the issues affecting South African society are really distillable, actually, to quite a few broad themes. And you can't do that on your own. You need to bring all of these people together in order to talk about that list of major priorities that civil society should be dealing with and have a conversation regarding what to do about those problems. So it was a federation, in a way, or a coming together of lots of organizations that typically work individually.
But what do all those organizations have about them? That which you think can, because look, the political party system is entrenched, and it has proven to be difficult to break their stranglehold on the socio-economic political setup of our country. Even in instances where civil society arose, as in the case of Jacob Zuma, for instance, and the fact that he's not around today, those civil society organizations had to work hand in hand with political parties across the spectrum. You'll recall, I mean, the marches to, Pretoria, to the union buildings and so on. And that was really the strength. But the minute you come to politics of elections and that stuff, who should assume power, then that's where things fall apart.
No, of course, and that's not what, I mean, the Defender Democracy gathering was not about electoral power in particular. But here's the thing for you. We've had a situation where we respond to specific issues in the country. I think there is a genuine concern that if civil society doesn't come together and speak with one voice on a range of issues affecting South African society, there is a real danger in 2024, in the lead up to 2024, that you will still have fractured voices all over the place dealing with single issues. Now, at Rivonia,
but aren't you bound to have that?
No, but let me share an insight with you. So we've been doing focus groups on the second round of research at Rivonia Circle. The one thing that South Africans of all races, different age groups across the country say consistently is how fed up they are with the party political system. The decision to abstain from voting in November 2021 was a deliberate one. People were not busy, or they had a funeral, or they had to be somewhere.
Or feeling cold.
They consciously decided not to vote because they've got a problem with the current political system. Now, one of the calls that came from there is that it is important that the issue of the nature of the representative democracy we have is put on the table as a political issue on which you can build a civil society campaign to make sure that this is better. Now, previously, this has been one or two organizations litigating in the courts about the issue, but you do need a mass of South Africans to come together and say, this far and no further. So to that extent, this gathering served the purpose. The reason you didn't have political parties there is that it's like the turkeys voting for Christmas. They like this system that entrenches the power of party political leaders to determine who holds them accountable. And they can remove them if they like. And the solution that is on the table in terms of the electoral reform bill is a nothing solution. And it's being slow-walked anyway to make sure that it comes to nothing. The question is, what is the appropriate response from a civil society perspective? And it's just one of the issues. No, that issue.
Were you able to answer that question?
No. I mean, you've seen. I mean, Mcebisi Jonas made a very telling provocation. There was an actual decision out of that conference to make this an issue that must be taken forward, on which civil society must campaign and build momentum, engage in civic education, to make sure that people understand that this electoral system doesn't work for them, but they have the power to agitate for changes to it. That's a change in tech, because previously, people would go to court. But this is a democracy. You can't have everything resolved in the courts. It must be resolved in the theater of politics. And I think to that extent, this gathering was really worthwhile.
I mean, but what is the one thing you would say was its biggest achievement? And not only that, but how then you take that forward?
Its biggest achievement, Vuyo, was that I think there was a realization that civil society needs to get into the political ring in ways that it has not done before. And on the basis of usually the same issues that either political parties want to avoid or that they campaign in a different direction on. There was talk of a People's Manifesto, which I think is really important, because in a democracy, you do need people to say, I've got my list of priorities. If your manifesto doesn't fit my list of priorities, then I'm not going to vote for you. Again, it changes the game in South African politics. The last point I'll make, Vuyo, is that...
But I want to ask this, because only yesterday, at the ANC's post-NEC a briefing, and you would have seen on social media as well, people illustrating this so well. On the one hand, having that little a soundbite from Bulemabe, that you need to sort yourselves out.
Oh, okay, not the mood of the mood. Is the
about electricity,
right.
And then the government will see how it can, help you, something to that effect.
Right.
And then on the other hand, people then took an extract from the ANC's manifesto about how it was going to do that. That which is asking, people to say, and I'm saying we can ventilate all these issues and put it out there, but how do you then get the political system as it is, given the fact that, whether people abstain, the political parties will fight or slug it out over the few votes that we have, and someone will be elected. And they may not be. So how does that, what I'm trying to understand is how whatever it is that you have decided then feeds into the political system, or in fact forces, those who are.
So, Vio, the way of answering this question is to take it outside of the Defender Democracy Conference specifically.
Okay.
And what I'm quite happy to talk about is what is needed in South Africa. What is needed is a political alternative, not just to the ANC, but to the political parties that we have, especially the top 3 political parties.
But by that you mean?
By that I mean a new political formation. A new political formation, Vuyo. And until we make that decision, it's going to be difficult to carry through the wishes that people, that were expressed by the delegates to the conference, because you have a wide range of stakeholders. You've got the NG Kerk, you've got the SA Council of Churches and so on. They can't take that kind of decision because they've got internal constituency issues. What really is required, and I feel that this was the subtext to the conversation, that you really need a political alternative. What you had was a gathering where some people are far advanced in that argument and others are still thinking about it. Others have got other difficulties in that they might be aligned to one or other of the existing political parties. What we know is that the political parties we have lost the confidence of the South African people. How do we know that? Millions of them just chose not to vote for any of them last year, right? And millions more people are choosing not to register for an election. And what we need is a political alternative, a contestation for power, because ultimately that's what you need to have. It's just that Defender Democracy is not the place where you kind of have that kind of conversation. The important thing about that conference,
and that's where I can't really find you, because remember, some of the people who were there, owe their allegiances to some of the big
historically they've been
parties.
in the ANC. Yeah,
some of them may well be fed up with it and are like, whatever needs to be done must be done.
Yes,
but there's also truth that some among them, do have ambitions or are keen to pursue very specific agendas. And not too long ago, many of them were the ones who created that barrier, that line of defense, where when people were raising a lot of things about the ANC specifically, were the ones who said, don't go.
Yeah.
Anyway, so such a disparate group and with so many agendas. I'm not saying perhaps not in the broadest sense, but given people's ambitions, agendas, and so on, how easy or difficult is it then going to be? Because if things have to move with speed, given the challenges we have right as a country, and the urgency with which we have to come up with solutions, how long is it going to take, anyone for that matter, to get to that point where they call us about something very real and concrete, but something that is agile enough that it will be able to move with speed, capture the imagination of South Africans, given the various crises that we are experiencing, and move with speed in implementing or putting into practice whatever you may have decided.
So I want us to get out of the Defender Democracy Conference as a unitary structure, because it is not.
Okay.
It is it is never going to take that decision. The conversation that you and I need to have is one about political alternatives. And I'm quite happy to have that conversation. But when we frame it specifically in the context of that conference. We're never going to get to that now. So you and I are going to go around in circles. We're going to go around in circles.
I'm taking that as a departure point.
So let's take that as a departure point. And what I will say, if you were to ask me what needs to happen next, if I had to give the closing address at that conference, which I did not do, I would have said, political power is central to effecting the changes that we want, that everybody in this room wants. When you leave this conference, you need to consider a specific decision. And that decision, it is on what basis in terms of values and principles, and on what basis in terms of priorities and solutions thereto. Are you going to support a new government in the union buildings? That's what you need to go back in your structures and discuss. And if you are able to make that kind of determination within those structures, then you need to find each other and support that alternative or form one. That's what I would have said, because that is the straight, honest answer. And you can do that if you're not limiting it to the conference itself. I think, though, what came out of the conference is a lot more people walked away with that realization. The question is, what are we collectively going to do with that obligation and that opportunity? Because there is an opportunity. All of these crises that we have, the pullback of people from democratic participation creates an obligation for us all to participate in political contestation, I believe.
What do you think is going to happen once anything begins to, pose a threat to political parties in particular? And I keep going back. I know you are, but the reality is that that's our system, currently. There's obviously going to be a pushback.
Oh, yes.
The reason why you have, one MP parties, because everyone thinks they have a chance.
Yes.
And people are just not prepared to. Now, how does something like what you're envisaging relate to, or deal with such realities? The fact that you have these political formations, which with all their limitations and problems, some of them will never in fact even see their, power at all, but everyone is convinced that they
are the
continue
one
to have a chance.
Yes, of course.
Others go in and out of the system. In other words, one MP in Parliament today, and the next day
they're going to caucus by themselves.
There's been all these attempts, to others. One party meets with another one. They both have one MP, and then they try to form something, but they never really go anywhere. And then there's all the splinter groups of all these, other. So how do we navigate this very complicated space? Are they, maybe what I say is that, would they be targets too? In other words, to bring into the fold? Or they're saying, let's forget about these people.
The latter is the answer for you. The latter is the answer. I do not believe that the existing political parties that we've had to reckon with over the last 27 years, all of them, including the new ones, have got the answer to the way of the future in terms of South Africa's political future, economic future, and the transformation of South African society to make it a better society. There are more people who are eligible to vote, who are not voting or not registered, than those who vote for these political parties. The opportunity you have in a democracy such as ours is to animate those people to come back and vote for an alternative. That's the opportunity.
Beyond that, to say what then would it take in a democracy?
Yes,
to do that. Which to me, from where I said, I'm a novice at these things. Something would, because to go there, you'd have to answer questions like, what was the COPE experience, for example?
Yes.
Which was the closest thing to. at some point,
Yeah.
deal with the ANC problem.
And the COPE experience, by the way, plays a very significant role still in why people are still offended by the idea
Which
of
is why
political parties. Yeah, by the idea of political parties. So in the work that we've been doing ahead of our public policy work, one of the things that people say, it's an expression, and it presents a somewhat complex but interesting problem. They say, we don't want these political parties because people fight for positions. You see ugly spectacles. They come and tell you what they're going to do for you, and then they walk away and you never see them for another 5 years. And in that 5 years, they steal the money. However, if we were to have our own thing, a movement, I would even campaign for it. Now, our electoral laws, you have to register as a political party. This is one of the reasons I believe, if you had to ask me about electoral issues that are campaignable, one, convince the South African people to vote for a party that's going to allow them to vote for their representatives directly. That's the first thing. The second thing, you centered the most important issues, which, by the way, are unemployment, it's safety, it's cost of living, and it's corruption. Those are the priorities that we're getting in our feedback. But the democratic representation is one of the biggest issues.
Well, let's leave it there for this evening. We'll continue, of course, to have these conversations given the challenges, the enormity, in fact, of the challenge, I should say, facing our country today. Songa Zibi, thanks very much for your time. And that's our show for tonight. To join us again tomorrow night, same time. Good night.